Veronica still remembered the exact moment her father told her she would fail at everything she ever tried. She was only 10 years old, sitting at the kitchen table finishing her homework, when her father slowly shook his head and said, "You just don't have what it takes, Veronica." The words were calm, almost casual, but they carried a certainty that hurt more than shouting ever could. Her younger brother Vincent sat across the table swinging his legs like nothing strange had happened. From that day forward, Veronica understood something painful about her home. No matter what she achieved, it would never be enough. Vincent, on the other hand, could do almost anything and still receive praise. If Vincent forgot his homework, their father would laugh and say, "That boy's got too many big ideas in his head." If Vincent barely passed a test, their father would take him out for ice cream and say he was proud of him for trying. Meanwhile, Veronica could bring home excellent grades and hear nothing but criticism. One evening Veronica asked quietly, "Dad, did you see my report card?" Her father barely looked up from the television and replied, "Grades don't mean much if you don't have real drive." When Veronica was 12, she saved money from mowing lawns and bought computer parts from a small electronics shop. For 3 months she spent every free evening watching tutorials and carefully assembling the machine in her bedroom. The night it finally powered on, the screen glowing bright blue, she felt proud in a way she had never felt before. She ran downstairs and called out, "Dad, come see what I built." Her father walked in, looked at the computer for a few seconds and shrugged. "Waste of time," he said flatly. "You'll never make a career with computers anyway." Just 2 days later Vincent came home with a poor spelling test. He had misspelled the word because, but their father clapped him on the back like he had won a trophy. "You tried your best and that's what matters," he said warmly. That evening the family went out for ice cream to celebrate Vincent's effort. Veronica sat quietly at the table, stirring her melting dessert while watching her brother laugh. The contrast was impossible to ignore. One child built a working computer and got criticism, while the other misspelled simple words and got applause. The favoritism only grew stronger as the children got older. When Veronica made the varsity basketball team, her father frowned and said sports were distracting her from realistic goals. When Vincent quit the junior team after 2 practices, their father praised him for knowing his limits. One evening Veronica finally asked, "Why is it always different for us?" Her father answered without hesitation, "Because Vincent has natural leadership. You just work hard." Those words stayed in Veronica's mind for years. In her father's eyes, Vincent was born for greatness, and Veronica was simply expected to struggle. By the time Veronica turned 16, she had already learned that if she wanted anything in life, she would have to earn it herself. That year she started a small lawn care business in her neighborhood. She bought a used mower with money she had saved from part-time jobs and printed simple flyers at the public library. Walking door to door felt embarrassing at first, but she forced herself to smile and introduce her service. Within 2 months she had 15 regular customers. One evening she told her father proudly, "I'm running my own business now." He barely looked up and replied, "That's just manual labor, Veronica." At first she thought he was joking, but his expression stayed cold and serious. "You should shut it down," her father continued, folding his arms. Veronica stared at him in disbelief and asked, "Why would I do that?" He leaned back in his chair and said, "Because Vincent would be much better at running it." The words felt unreal for a moment, like she had misunderstood him. Then he added calmly, "Give him the client list and let him take over." Veronica's heart pounded as she realized her father was completely serious. "I built that business," Veronica said slowly, trying to keep her voice steady. "I knocked on every door and earned every customer." Her father waved his hand dismissively and replied, "You're just doing the physical work." He nodded toward Vincent, who was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. "He has the personality for leadership." Veronica felt anger rising in her chest and said firmly, "No, I'm not giving it away." The room went silent for a moment before her father's face hardened. "Then you're being selfish," he said. That night Veronica was grounded for refusing to hand over her business to Vincent. She sat in her room staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how defending something she built made her the villain. Downstairs she could hear her father talking to Vincent about future opportunities and learning entrepreneurship. The conversation sounded like a business meeting, except Veronica had done all the work. She whispered to herself, "One day I'll prove them wrong." The words were quiet, but they carried a determination that would shape the rest of her life. From that moment, Veronica stopped expecting fairness from her family. She focused on her work, her studies, and her future instead of chasing approval that would never come. While Vincent spent most of his time hanging out with friends and talking about big dreams, Veronica kept building small victories one step at a time. She worked after school, saved every dollar she could, and continued growing her lawn business quietly. One evening, a neighbor told her, "You're the hardest working teenager on this street." Veronica smiled politely and replied, "I just don't plan on failing." When it came time for college applications, Veronica worked harder than ever. She balanced school, her small business, and a part-time job at a local restaurant, often finishing homework late at night. Her grades stayed near the top of her class, and her teachers respected her discipline. One evening, she showed her acceptance letters to her father and said carefully, "I got into 3 state universities." He glanced at the papers and shrugged. "College might not be worth it for you," he said. Veronica blinked in surprise and asked, "Why not?" His answer was simple and cruel. "You'll probably drop out anyway." 3 weeks later, the conversation in the house suddenly changed when Vincent mentioned college. Their father immediately became excited, talking about opportunities and bright futures. "Vincent deserves the best education we can give him," he told their mother proudly. Veronica listened from the kitchen doorway, stunned by the difference in tone. Later she asked quietly, "Are you helping me with tuition too?" Her father shook his head without hesitation. "No, you'll need to take loans." Then he added something that cut deeper than the money. "Vincent has a better chance of succeeding." Not long after that conversation, their father revealed another secret. He had been saving money for Vincent's education for years. Sitting at the dinner table, he announced proudly, "I've set aside about $40,000 for Vincent's college." Veronica felt her stomach drop as she heard the number. She asked slowly, "You saved that just for him?" Her father nodded without even noticing her expression. "It's an investment in someone who will make the family proud," he said confidently. That night, Veronica packed a small suitcase and stared around her room. The walls held memories of years spent trying to prove herself to people who had already decided she would fail. She walked downstairs and stood by the door while her parents watched television. "I'm leaving for college early," she said calmly. Her father didn't even turn around. "You'll be back in a semester when reality hits," he replied. Veronica opened the door and said quietly, "I'd rather sleep in my car than come back here for help." College life was brutal, but it was also freeing in a strange way. Veronica worked nearly 30 hours a week while carrying a full course load in computer science. Most mornings she woke up at 5 to study before class. After lectures, she went straight to her job doing data entry for a small accounting office. One evening, a coworker asked, "How do you keep this pace every day?" Veronica smiled tiredly and answered, "Failure isn't an option for me." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything she had endured growing up. During her sophomore year, Veronica discovered a new opportunity that slowly began to change her life. One of the accountants at the office mentioned that a local clinic was struggling with a messy patient database. The system was outdated, slow, and constantly causing errors. Veronica listened carefully and finally said, "I think I could fix that." The accountant looked surprised and asked, "You know how to do database work?" Veronica nodded and replied, "I've been teaching myself for months." A week later, she met with the clinic manager and carefully explained her plan. The project took Veronica nearly 3 weeks to complete. Every evening after work and classes, she sat in her small apartment studying database structures and writing code. Some nights she barely slept, but she refused to quit halfway through the job. When the new system finally went live, the clinic staff noticed the difference immediately. Files loaded faster and patient records were organized properly for the first time. The clinic manager shook her hand and said, "You saved us weeks of work." Veronica smiled quietly and replied, "I'm glad it helped." The clinic paid Veronica $800 for the project, which felt like a fortune to her at the time. But the real value came from something else entirely. A few days later, the clinic manager called her again and said, "I told 2 other offices about your work." Within a month, Veronica had 3 new clients asking for help with their systems. Each small project built her confidence and her reputation. One evening, her roommate asked, "Do you think you could do this full-time one day?" Veronica paused and said thoughtfully, "Maybe I will." While Veronica was slowly building skills and clients, Vincent's college experience followed a very different path. Their father constantly posted photos online about Vincent's amazing future at his expensive private school. Every post talked about Vincent's potential and bright opportunities ahead. Veronica noticed something strange though. None of those posts ever mentioned her name or her achievements. One evening she showed the posts to her roommate and laughed softly. "It's like I don't exist in that family," she said. Her roommate shook her head and replied, "Then build a life they can't ignore." That life began taking shape faster than Veronica expected. By the time she reached her junior year, her freelance work was bringing in nearly as much money as her regular job. She had taught herself SQL, Python, and database optimization through countless online tutorials and practice projects. Her days were exhausting, but each completed project felt like proof that she was moving forward. One evening she looked at the small list of clients pinned above her desk and whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." For the first time her future felt like something she controlled. Veronica graduated from college with honors and a degree in computer science that she had earned through sheer determination. On the day of her graduation she stood among hundreds of students in caps and gowns while families cheered from the stands. Her phone buzzed several times during the ceremony, but none of the messages were from home. Later that evening her roommate asked gently, "Did your parents call?" Veronica shook her head and smiled calmly. "It's fine," she said. "I didn't do this for them anyway." Shortly after graduating, Veronica accepted a job as a database analyst at a growing logistics company. The position paid well enough for her to start paying down her student loans and finally live without constant financial panic. Her manager quickly noticed her work ethic and attention to detail. Within the first year she had already improved several internal systems that had been slowing down the company for months. One afternoon her manager stopped by her desk and said, "You've got real talent, Veronica." She simply replied, "I just like solving problems." But even while working her new job, Veronica never stopped freelancing. In the evenings she continued helping small businesses clean up their messy databases and automate routine tasks. The extra work was exhausting, but it also gave her something valuable. Every new client expanded her network and taught her something different about how businesses operated. One evening a client told her, "You should really start your own consulting firm." Veronica laughed quietly and said, "Maybe one day when I'm ready." Meanwhile, Vincent returned home after his first year of college under very different circumstances. He had been caught submitting assignments written by other students and was expelled for academic dishonesty. When Veronica heard the news from a distant relative, she wasn't even surprised. Her father defended Vincent publicly, telling everyone it was just a misunderstanding. "Boys make mistakes," he told people confidently. The $40,000 saved for Vincent's education had disappeared after just one disastrous year. Back at home, Vincent began what their father proudly called his entrepreneurial journey. In reality, it was a series of business ideas that never lasted more than a few months. The first idea was a clothing brand that Vincent insisted would become the next big trend. Their father invested $15,000 into the project without hesitation. Vincent designed only a few shirts before losing interest entirely. When the business collapsed, their father blamed bad timing and market competition instead of Vincent's lack of effort. The next venture was a social media management company. Their father bought Vincent a brand new laptop and paid for online courses to help him get started. Vincent created an Instagram account for the business and posted twice before abandoning the page completely. Two small clients who had been promised marketing support never heard from him again. Their father personally returned their deposits and apologized. Yet he still insisted Vincent had the mind of a future businessman. Then came the food truck idea, which was Vincent's biggest project yet. Their father spent nearly $30,000 buying a used truck and kitchen equipment. Vincent planned to sell gourmet grilled cheese sandwiches downtown. For 2 weeks he showed up at noon, served a handful of customers and complained constantly about how hard the work was. By the third week he stopped opening the truck altogether. The expensive vehicle sat unused in the driveway for almost a year before being sold at a major loss. After the food truck failure, Vincent decided he would become a day trader. Their father gave him $10,000 to invest in the stock market. Vincent watched a few online videos and began making impulsive trades based on internet rumors. Within 3 months he had lost $8,000. The remaining money disappeared quickly on expensive clothes and nights out with friends. Still, their father defended him, saying every entrepreneur needed time to find the right opportunity. During these same years, Veronica quietly continued building her career. Within 3 years, she had earned a promotion to senior analyst at her company. Her work had improved major database systems and saved the business thousands of dollars in operational costs. More importantly, her freelance client list kept growing steadily. One evening, she looked at her notebook filled with project ideas and thought seriously about the future. Maybe it's time, she whispered to herself. At 27 years old, Veronica made the most terrifying decision of her life. She resigned from her comfortable job and officially started her own consulting company. Using her savings, she gave herself 6 months to build enough clients to survive. The risk kept her awake many nights, staring at the ceiling and questioning everything. One morning her friend asked nervously, "What if it fails?" Veronica took a deep breath and answered calmly, "Then at least it will be my failure, not someone else's prediction." Those first 6 months tested Veronica more than anything she had faced before. Some days she woke up at 3 in the morning with anxiety twisting in her stomach. Rent was due, bills were waiting, and new clients were never guaranteed. She spent her days calling businesses, attending networking events, and sending proposals to anyone willing to listen. Many companies ignored her messages completely. But every once in a while someone would say yes. Each small contract gave her just enough momentum to keep going. Her first major breakthrough came from a regional logistics company struggling with their warehouse database. Their system was full of duplicate records and slow manual processes that wasted hours every day. Veronica studied the system carefully and said during the meeting, "I can rebuild this from the ground up." The manager looked skeptical but agreed to give her a chance. For 2 months she worked tirelessly redesigning the database and automating several routine tasks. When the project finished, the company reduced processing time by almost 40%. That success changed everything for Veronica's young company. The logistics company was so impressed that they recommended her services to several partners in the same industry. Within months she had multiple new contracts waiting. Her first year brought in $70,000 in revenue. After expenses she paid herself about $40,000, barely more than her old job. Still, the feeling of building something on her own made every long night worthwhile. The second year brought even more growth. Veronica's reputation spread quietly through business networks, and referrals began arriving regularly. By the end of that year her company earned $150,000. She hired her first employee, a recent graduate named Daniel who reminded her of herself years earlier. When he asked why she worked so hard every day, Veronica simply said, "Because I know what it's like when people expect you to fail." By the third year the company passed $300,000 in revenue. 2 more employees joined the team, and Veronica finally moved the business out of her apartment into a small office space. The journey was not smooth though. At one point a major client was lost after being acquired by a larger corporation. Another time an employee tried to steal client data and start a competing service. Each challenge forced Veronica to strengthen her systems and become a better leader. 5 years after starting her company, Veronica was running a successful consulting firm with 12 employees and annual revenue exceeding $2 million. She had purchased a comfortable apartment, paid off most of her student loans, and even invested in a small rental property. Everything her father once said she could never achieve had quietly become reality. Yet she rarely thought about proving him wrong anymore. She was simply focused on building the life she wanted. One afternoon Veronica's assistant walked into her office and said, "There's a man here asking to see you." Veronica glanced up from her computer and asked, "Did he give a name?" The assistant hesitated before replying, "He said he's your father." Veronica felt a strange calm settle over her as she walked to the lobby. Her father stood there looking older than she remembered, glancing around the busy office filled with employees working at their desks. Inside her office the conversation quickly revealed the real reason for his visit. Vincent had started another business, a drop-shipping operation that collapsed within months. Their father had co-signed a loan for $45,000 that Vincent could not repay. After explaining the situation, her father finally said, "You should give Vincent a management job here." Veronica stared at him in disbelief and asked quietly, "A management job?" He nodded and replied, "He has entrepreneurial experience." Veronica couldn't stop herself from laughing softly. "You mean he has experience failing," she said calmly. Her father's face hardened as he insisted that family should support each other. "You owe us," he said angrily. Veronica folded her hands on the desk and replied, "No, I don't." She reminded him of the years he spent telling her she would never succeed, of the business he tried to force her to give away, and of the money saved only for Vincent's future. When she finished speaking, Veronica stood and walked toward the door. "The answer is no," she said firmly. Her father shouted that she was selfish and had forgotten her family. Security escorted him out of the building while employees watched in stunned silence. After that day, Veronica blocked every attempt at contact and moved forward with her life. Years of doubt and criticism had shaped her into someone strong enough to stand alone. In the end, the greatest victory was not proving them wrong. It was building a life where their opinions no longer mattered.